Hello everyone, welcome. Today we are going to discuss Shakespearean conception of tragedy. This is a very important topic and in your exams this topic comes like a write a short essay on Shakespearean conception of tragedy as a illustrated in the play Macbeth or how far does Macbeth answers to the conception of a typical Shakespearean tragedy. So these are important questions. So we will discuss about this. Let's begin it. Introduction. Shakespearean tragedy is primarily the story of one person, the hero, or at the most two, the hero and the heroine. This is true of only of the law tragedies, in which the hero and the heroine are equally important. So, in Shakespearean love tragedy like Romeo and Juliet, both hero and heroine are important. And Antony and Cleopatra also. Antony was also important. Cleopatra was also important. Otherwise, Shakespearean tragedy is basically the story of a one person. Story of primarily of hero, like a Macbeth, like a Hamlet, like King Lear, and Othello. The story further depicts the troubled part of the life of the tragic hero, and a story depicted the life of a tragic hero which proceeds and leads to his death. So ultimately, the hero get his death, in an instantaneous death, occurring by some accident in his height of hero's prosperities, would not suffice for the purpose of tragedy. So that hero grows in his life, it get his prosperity, and then ultimately he reaches to his tragedy and his tragic end. Again, the suffering and the calamities of the hero were to be of an exceptional nature, and these calamities were not of a simple nature, but it was of exceptional nature. They were unexpected and generally contrasted with the previous happenings and the glory of the tragic hero. So earlier and previous happenings were different of tragic hero. He was a very glorious person. He and then unexpected twists and turns comes in his life, and he ultimately reaches to his doom. Such um, such exceptional suffering are the chief sources of the tragic emotions of pity and fear, especially of pity for the unfortunate victim. So, when we watch such a tragic hero and such tragic tragedy, our emotions are aroused, and we also get fear. We also get fearful, and our pity is also aroused for that victim of tragedy. Now, discuss about Bradley. Bradley was a very great critic of Shakespearean tragedy. Bradley on Shakespearean tragedy, he discusses that according to A.C. Bradley, a Shakespearean tragedy is a story of exceptional calamities which proceed from the hero action beside his sterling character. So, the hero is generally a noble person, exalted and lofty in spirit. So, Shakespearean hero are not common man, they are very exceptional. They are king or some general, like Hamlet was Prince of Denmark, Macbeth was also Thane of Cawdor, then he became King of Scotland, and King Lear also was a king. Othello was a general. So these were exceptional people, and the hero is generally a noble person, exalted and lofty in spirit, and the supernatural element also introduced in largely responsible for the ultimate downfall. And there is a supernatural elements like a ghost, fairies, and witches are also introduced in that tragedy. And this supernatural characters also help in in responsible. They get largely responsible for the downfall of that hero. Like witches are responsible for the downfall of Macbeth and all that. And the chance or the accident or the ghost or the witches brings about disaster. So there are many chance accidents, many happenings which happens instantaneously. And there is a ghost in Hamlet, there is a witches in Macbeth. Hero's action and grave shortcomings in him brings about his calamities and downfall. And hero performs certain actions, and he has some shortcomings. He has some weaknesses. Because of that, his downfall is reached. The disadvantages, situations, and abnormal characters constitute the main elements of the Shakespearean tragedies. The inevitable gloom and catastrophes looms large by these supernatural agencies like ghosts, witches, and such other wicked spirits. Chance and fate also play their vital role in Shakespearean tragedy. There are many chances, there are many coincidences in his tragedies, and there are a tragic flaw also. Uh, Aristotle's conception of tragedy. According to Aristotle, tragedy is a representation of an action which is serious, complete in itself, and of a different length. It is expressed in a speech made beautiful in different ways in different part of the play. It is acted, not narrated, and by exciting pity and fear, gives a healthy relief in such situations. So, this is a definition of hero's tragedy of Aristotle. Shakespearean tragedy is a mingled thread of weal and woes. There are both sad and happiness, pain and pleasure, as life itself is such a process. Life is not a just a pain or just a pleasure. It is a mingling of both. So in Shakespeare tragedy, which is a representation of life itself, so there is a pain also, there is a pleasure also, there is a weal also, there is a woo also. And Shakespearean mirrored life in a true perspective, in which joys and sorrows, tears and smiles frequently alternate. So he was a greater artist than the other dramatists who blindly followed Aristotle and produced far inferior plays. So there are some, were some dramatists who just followed Aristotle line by line, and as if he was a god, he was a Dixon was like a god, and their plays were much inferior to Shakespeare, who did not follow those unities. He was not a university read person. He get only school education, and so he learned from his craft from real life, and he did not bother for the three unities of tragedy. Probably he did not know the unities, he did not care for them, and he wrote romantic tragedies, romantic comedies without any rules. The theme of Shakespearean tragedy. The theme of Shakespearean tragedy is a struggle between good and evil, resulting in serious convulsions and disturbances, sorrow, suffering, and death. So, in what are the themes of the Shakespearean tragedy? There are both good and evil, and there are serious twists and turns, there are disturbances, there are sorrows, there are suffering, and there are so many deaths, murders. Dowden, another critic, says that tragedy is conceived by Shakespeare is connected with the ruin or a restoration of the soul and of the life of the man. It depicts men and women struggling with evil, often succumbing to it, and brought to death by it. Though through their heroic struggle, we realize the immense potentiality of man. Shakespearean tragedy is a glorification of the soul of a man. It never leaves behind a depressing effect. It soothes, consoles, and strengthens. So, this is are the qualities described by Dowden that in Shakespearean tragedy, men and women struggle, and they struggle with a will, and they often succumb to that circumstances, and sometimes they get death also, and they play a very heroic struggle, they give a very heroic struggle, and when we see those struggle we realize that how there is this immense potentiality in a man, humankind in a man, and Shakespearean tragedy is a glorification of the soul of a man, and we do not get depressed watching the, instead of that what it does, it soothes our soul, it consoles us, it strengthens our willpower, and we see all this tragedy, and in this way we become more learned and more just we can say we can understand life move better than if we will watch those tragedies. Shakespearean tragic hero. Now, how are the Shakespearean tragic hero? The hero of the Shakespearean tragedy is a person of a high estate, a king, a prince, as in King Lear in the Hamlet, or in the leader of the state, like a Brutus in Julius Caesar. So, Brutus was also a leader of the state in Julius Caesar. So, these are kingly person, not ordinary human beings. This is a essential difference between the Shakespearean and the modern tragedy, where the hero is generally a person of ordinary rank. The reason why Shakespearean elevates the rank of the tragic hero is that the fate of a king or a general or a noble man affect the welfare of whole nation or the empire, and when he falls from these heights of prosperity, the spectacle produces in us a sense of powerlessness of a man and the omnipotence of the fate, which no tale of private life can possibly produce. So, this is this is said by critics that why his characters are so elevated and why his tragic hero are so kingly person. It was because if when we see the such a noble person, such a king falling from such a height, and we see that they are they don't have any power in front of fate, in front of God, in front of fate, everybody is same. There is no king and there is no ordinary person. So we get much knowledge by watching all those things. And so let's move on from this. And when beggars die, there are no correct scene. The high position of the hero is not at all. He is an exceptional being, raised above the level of the average humanity, and commands respect from all the sundry. And his heroes are not just a king or a general, but they are also having exceptional characters also, and they are above all above the average humanity, and they command respect. They have respect in their life, and they're extremely different from the ordinary human beings. His passion, desires, and will assumes a terrible force. His passions are great, his desires are great, and it comes with a terrible force. He is an ideal being, he is an ideal person who makes us conscious of the greatness of human nature. So we make conscious of how human nature can become so great by watching those tragedies. The hero of the tragic hero spring from some prominent characteristics in him, which has been called the tragic trait. So they have certain tragic traits, some certain tragic characteristics, features. This tragic trait has a touch of greatness in it, and when to it any combined genius and power, the struggle of the hero stirs in us not only sympathy and pity but also admiration and awe. So when we watch those tragic heroes and their struggle of hero, it arouses sympathy for that hero, pity for that hero, and we are filled with awe. And there is an impression of a colossal waste at the end of the Shakespearean tragedy. So there is a so much waste. There are so many murders, death at the end of the tragedy. Almost stage is littered with the dead bodies. So many deaths, so many suicides, murders, and all that. And now, final ending. The final feeling, which a typical Shakespearean tragedy leaves on the minds of the spectator or a reader, is that of awe and sympathy. So, readers feel sympathetic towards that tragic hero, and spectators feels sympathy and awe for that hero. We feel awe at the fall of such a great man and such a great quality, oh, such a wastage. And we feel that the suffering of the tragic hero are disproportionate to his deserving. We think that he doesn't deserve so much downfall. He doesn't deserve such a death, we feel like that. Then we also feel sympathy with the tragic hero, and our sympathy is very intense. This sympathy is caused by the manner in which the hero meets his end. We do not like the manner. We have a great sympathy for him, and we feel awe for that manner in which the hero meets his end. When a Shakespearean tragedy hero, tries the reader have a mixture of emotions, pain, and his tragedy, admiration for the noble qualities and the promise of the better thing to come. So we admire the noble qualities of that hero. This may be likened to the state when all passions are spent. In the end, it is not a death about which are amused. It is a very calm of the Hamlet. Lear's innocent awakening, and the musings of Macbeth, which are remembered by us. So we see so many things, we see so many struggle, but in the end, our feeling is a feeling of not of disturbance, but it is a calm. We feel calm watching Hamlet, watching Macbeth, and all those things. So such was the Shakespearean tragedy. Hope you like this. Thank you so much.